Welcome back, high school hockey fans. It's getting late in the season and we're down to the sectionals. I'm Mike Hammett with this week's version of This Week in Wisconsin Prep Hockey. I've got a full staff, Bill Berg Jr., Del Scanlon, and I've even brought an extra one along, Bob Bradovich. How you been, Bob?
I'm good, guys. Excited to see also all the action this week in the sectionals. We got some good matchups coming up.
Oh, you aren't kidding. Well, we got sectional previews we're going to go through quick here tonight. Section 1, D2. All right. Now let me get to that.
I can take that for you, MJ. That pretty much went according to script. All the top four seeded teams all won and all won handily. New Richmond beat Chequamegon. Rice Lake beat Whistle Flag. Hayward beat Spooner, and Amory beat Medford. The closest game was 7-1, so nothing surprising there. Sets up a matchup this week or tomorrow, let's say. Number 1, New Richmond versus number 4, Rice Lake, and number 3, Hayward versus at number 2, Amory. All what we expected there.
Yep, that's pretty much.
Amory, New Richmond, New Richmond and Rice Lake, they're in the same conference. They've met twice this year. New Richmond won both times. Amory, they beat New Richmond in their only matchup earlier. So give a slight nod to Amory and a bigger nod to New Richmond in these two games, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. New Richmond, and talking with Coach John Larson, both before his team came to Hobbs to play Memorial and then afterwards, he's got some of the same guys back up front. They're not as strong defensively. Easton Schmidt graduated, and then they also lost Blake Milton to graduation, and he was an all-state caliber goalie. So that's kind of been a kind of an ongoing evolution of just trying to get the guys that they have to be aware of what they do defensively. But I tell you, with the guys that they have up front, Catcher Langness, Bjorn Bonneman, Matthew Unger, then even you throw in those second guys like Stephen Chapman and Zaylen Sweet, they got a lot of guys that can put the puck in the net, and you can tell they play really well together. So I think you'd give them the edge over Rice Lake. I'm a big fan of Josh Engel, Rice Lake head coach, but I don't know that anybody around these parts has been hit as hard by guys leaving for juniors. He had that team that won the Division II state title a couple of years ago. He had a number of guys that, at least by grade, should still be playing, but they've decided to go elsewhere. They'll still work hard. They'll still run their systems. They'll still do their stuff. But I think Rice Lake just doesn't match up from a scoring standpoint with New Richmond. Plus, New Richmond gets to play them in their own barn. And on the other side, too, I think you'd look at Amory. Some high-end players like Vincent Green, the Henningsgaard kid, I think is a really good player, too. I think it all sets up for that Amory-New Richmond rematch. New Richmond got him in the sectional final last year, and the game was in Amory. So we'll see what might happen this time around. Hayward, I think, is a team that will probably give Hayward a closer game, right? The other way around. Hayward, I think, can give Amory a closer game than what Rice Lake can do against New Richmond. But then again, it's hockey. You never know some nights.
Yeah, and as we mentioned last week in the My Hockey computer rankings, for Division II, New Richmond is number 1, Amory is number 4, Hayward and Rice Lake come in at 15 and 16, so that's pretty much middle of the pack for Division II, whereas New Richmond and Amory are clearly at the top of the chart in Division II.
All right, guys. I want to move on to the girls in Section 1. We got Superior, the number 1 seed, playing Northland Pines, and the number two seed, the Central Wisconsin Storm, taking on the Hayward Hurricanes. And you wonder again if the Central Wisconsin and Superior are set up for another collision course.
Well, before we get to that, I mean, we did have the regional contest during the week. On Thursday, we had Hayward beat Medford handily at 6-0, but number 5 Northland Pines upset number 4 Wisconsin Valley Union. That's, you know, a 5 beating a 4 or a 9 beating an 8 is your least form of upset. But the Northland Pines did beat Wisconsin Valley Union. Actually did it in overtime. Northland Pines had a 2-0 lead after 2 periods. Union tied it up in the 3rd period with 2 goals, and then Pines won it in overtime on a power play. So, you know, I know we talked before about you know, a power play goal when Brett and I were watching the Bay Area versus Central Wisconsin Storm on a controversial power play, but we don't know if this one was controversial or not. It was an interference call, which, you know, it looks like kind of a head scratcher in overtime, but you don't know. You don't know what it was. So I didn't see it, so I can't really speculate. But yeah, so we do have a number 5 taking on a number 1. But again, the number 1 and 2, Superior and Central Wisconsin, are 2 of our top 3 teams, if not even number 1 and number 2, on the season in our rank. You know, in our rankings, I think, yeah, in the computer rankings, they're number 1 and number 3. Hayward is number 5, and Pines is lower.
Right.
I think they're 1 and 3 in our rankings as well. Bay Area passed them right in that last week.
So
So
I don't have
Hayward
it.
and Central Wisconsin have played twice this year already. Central Wisconsin won both of those games.
Yeah, but I believe that they were in the same position last year against Hayward, where they had beaten them twice in the regular season, and then Hayward beat them in the sectional semifinals.
So are you saying that's going to happen again, and the sectional final is going to be moved from Mosinee somewhere northwards if it's Superior and Hayward again?
Well, if it's Superior and Hayward again, the sectional final will most certainly be moved. But I'm not saying it's going to happen again. I'm just saying that it should. Both teams are going to have that on their minds.
The Central Wisconsin Storm, haven't they played Superior this year?
They got beat by them once, and then they tied them the second time.
Yep, they got beat down in Madison, and then on Superior's home ice, they ended up tied.
Well, and what's interesting there too is that the sectional final is set for Mosinee, so you'd think that's an advantage for the Storm, even though they would be the 2 seed and Superior would get the last line change, but still.
I mean, it's
Then
an
again,
advantage
Superior-
that they don't have to ride the bus. But I don't-
Right, Superior, yeah, Superior is used to the bus rides, so that's the one thing. But yeah, I think you know, to echo what's been said, I think Hayward versus the Storm. I think that on paper that looks like a closer matchup than Superior and Pines, but you know, same kind of thing. You never know when those teams get together. Superior, just in terms of what I've seen from them and just the points that they're putting up, it's a pretty formidable team, and the fact that they came up a little short last year and returned a lot of those same kids, I think it's a motivated group.
All right, so let me ask you this. It's a 2:00 game, and it's a 4.5-hour drive, bus ride from Superior to Mosinee. So do you come down the night before?
I would consider it.
Or do you get them on the bus at what, 8 o'clock? Drive down and try to give them like an hour and a half to get loose?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think to some degree it depends on the team and the kids. You know, what are they going to respond to better? I mean, hockey, yeah, I think kids are used to early morning wake up calls and, you know, driving a good chunk of the state to get to your next game and playing, you know, at you know, morning games and late night games and all that. I think a lot of it just depends on the team and kind of what their, you know, what works best for them.
I've seen a number of games this year where, you know, a team that traveled a long distance has come out flat in the first period and then really jacked it up in the second. It can happen.
Yeah, I mean, and that you know, a 2 o'clock start. Yeah, I think that's another thing. You know, in the Storm's advantage. Like I said, if they get to that point, I don't think they can look past Hayward though, and my guess is that they won't, just being what happened last year.
All right, well, let's move on to the boys Division 1, Section 1. Bob, this is up in your a little bit of the woods up there. Round
Well,
two.
yeah, and what's interesting, I've seen all these teams. I'm, you know, doing the Zaleski Sports webcast, and most of the time with Mike Schwengler, pretty much all the time. We've seen all these teams. We've seen Chippewa. Obviously, we've seen Memorial a lot from the start of the year to now. Seen Hudson, seen Stevens Point. And yeah, the top 4 seeds have advanced. I don't think there were any, as I looked at the brackets, I don't think there were any really big surprises. I think the margin that Spash beat Rapids was a little surprising to me. I thought Rapids might be able to give them a little bit more of a run, but you got, you know, 4 teams that have had really good seasons. That Memorial Chippewa game, that ought to be a dandy. I mean, the first time around it was 4-2 Chippewa, and they got a late period goal to put that one away. The second time around, they went to overtime, tied 2-2. And if you had any shade of purple on, you're going to be still squawking about a blatant hooking penalty that wasn't called in overtime that could have given Memorial, you know, kid was kind of coming down the high slot, appeared to get hooked. They let him play on. Puck carries to the sideboards. Chippewa forward pokes it back. The defenseman goes in on a breakaway and scores. So, you know, you look at that Memorial loss and then the 2 double overtime losses to Hudson, the seeds could have been a lot different. Nonetheless, you know, they're all going to have to play each other anyway. And it just, I think it's going to be an incredibly close game. The one advantage Chippewa has, I'll say 2. One, that Chippewa just for whatever reason plays better in its own barn. I don't know why. They just come out with more juice. They must feed off the crowd or something, being in their own locker room, whatever it is, ice surface. They always seem to play well at home. And I think even more importantly in this matchup, they get the final line change. And in that first matchup, when they played up at Chippewa, Memorial sent its 3rd line out. Scott Parker countered and put his 1st line back out there. They win a face-off. They're holding the zone. Pretty soon they bang one in. So it'll be curious to see what Mike Collins and the Memorial staff do. Do they not go deep into their bench and only skate the 2 lines? Do they always try to keep Nick Madsen and Dylan Byrne, one of those 2, on the ice at all times? I mean, it's really interesting. In that game that they played at Hobbs to close out the regular season, I just got this sneaking suspicion that both coaches were holding something back just a little bit. Because by that time, the brackets had been released and, you know, anybody could look at it and say, yeah, we could get a rematch of Memorial and Chippewa in just a couple of weeks. So while it was a really competitive game and a pretty intense game, it didn't have the feistiness as a lot of Memorial Chippewa games sometimes do. But like I said, I just think they they played it knowing that they could very well meet again, and they're going to do it tomorrow night, and it should be a lot of fun up there. I know Mike Thompson, the AD up at Chi High, was already putting something out on social media today that it's going to be a packed house and there's only standing room available and so on and so forth. So it should be a real good time and a really good matchup between teams that have some high end guys. I busted out the Team Wisconsin jersey that Mike Schwengler gave me a couple years ago. But a lot of those guys play Team Wisconsin. A lot of those Memorial forwards. I'm sorry, Memorial's defensemen, Byrne and Madsen, along with a lot of those Chippewa forwards, play on Team Wisconsin. So it's a group of guys that know each other really well. Chippewa's probably deeper at the forward position. Memorial, just because they got the two high end guys, as opposed to Chippewa having one in Gus Thorpe. Maybe a little deeper on the back end. The goaltending matchup is real interesting. Chippewa's got the transfer, McMarlowe, who came over from Matamidi, Minnesota, and was eventually ruled eligible. So he's had a great season. Memorial alternated his two goaltenders, but they've settled on the freshman, Evan Madsen, who's Nick's younger brother. He's a real solid goaltender. He's just kind of unflappable back there. He plays his angles well, doesn't give up rebounds. So like I said, it's just I'm really looking forward to it, and should be a lot of fun tomorrow night.
Before we got to this point, we had the regionals, and this one, being Division I, there were actually 2 rounds, and in the first round, which would have been last Tuesday, not really a surprise, but an upset again. A number 9 seed beating a number 8. That was DC Everest over Eau Claire North. And that game was Eau Claire North was up 2-1 after 2 periods, but DC Everest scored twice in the third period to take that one, and the tying goal was scored by Lorelei's favorite evergreen, Charlie Biolo Thompson, her personal, Captain Evergreen. So they went in, and then they got handled rather handily. Yeah, Chippewa Falls did not have much trouble with them. Spash did not have much trouble with Wisconsin Rapids. Superior and Eau Claire Memorial. It was a 2-1 game. Eau Claire Memorial led 2-1 after 2 periods, and then put in 2 more in the third to take that game, and they outshot Superior almost 2-1. And the Wausau West and Hudson game, that was actually tied 1-1 after 2 periods. And as we surmised, Julian Scalcucci, the freshman, was in net for Wausau West, and they were tied 1-1 after 2 periods. The shots were 34-13 in favor of Hudson at that point, but Scalcucci was keeping them, in the game. Hudson got 2 goals late in that third period and then added an empty netter to make the final 4-1. But excuse me, it was a tight game up until that point.
This is one of those Hudson teams that I don't think they're as strong as those teams that went back to back when David Struski was coaching them, which is not to say Charlie Singerhouse isn't doing a good job, because he is. He's getting the guys to buy in. But they're just sound up and down the lineup. The late Jeff Sauer would always say it's a good thing Hudson players have numbers on their jerseys, because you can't tell them apart. And in those days, the Hudson guys were all like 6 feet 190 and just solid skaters, and they played a good 2-way game. They don't have that same size. This year they're it's guys that are 5'8", 5'10", but they just play really well together, and it's a team that's gotten better. Some of those losses came to, I think they went 1-3 against Minnesota teams, playing teams from the metro area. And I think they can give Stevens Point a run. Stevens Point's got some talent. That top line of Miller, Molsky, and Schroeder, those kids are good. Then again, you got 2 sophomores and a junior, and when they played at Memorial, and maybe it was just a bad day for Spash that time, it just seemed that Memorial pushed those forwards out wide. They played a physical game, and Spash just never reacted really well. Spash really didn't get a lot of good scoring chances until the third period. So even though Spash has got home ice advantage, I think Hudson goes into that game. You know, they're Hudson. They're used to winning. They've got the, you know, they've had a program that's has really been as good as any in the state for about the last 10 years. And I think those kids go over there thinking that they can go and beat Spash. They haven't played each other. There's a couple common opponents. I don't know what you can pull from that, but there again, it may not have the, you know, the local rivalry aspect of Tri High and Memorial, but I think Hudson and Spash sets up to be a pretty good game.
Hudson is another team that's lost players to other opportunities.
Yep.
Brody
Sure.
Dietz, who was at Hudson his freshman and sophomore years, really strong defenseman. Now has a C on his chest at St. Thomas Academy as a senior.
Yep.
In Minnesota, and then their goalie, Aiden Temperang, not playing hockey because he's got a football scholarship already lined up, and football is
also at St. University of St. Thomas.
University of St. Thomas, not the
and
I mean they lost.
Yeah, and I was talking to a couple of the other guys, and
so
yeah, they just said that, you know, with having the scholarship and, you know, wear and tears on his knees and his legs and things like that, he just thought it was time to, you know, put away the skates. And that couldn't have been an easy decision. I mean, that kid he'd been a really solid goaltender. They won one state championship with him, and then they won a sectional championship, lost in a state semi in overtime last year. Big athletic kid. Like I said, though, it's like this Hudson group. There's not one standout, but they all collectively play really well together. And you know that you're going to have to play a really good game to beat them. And like I said, of the teams that I saw come to Hobbs this year, they were the one that stood out mainly because of just how well they played top to bottom. I don't think they have a whole lot of like super high end kids. They don't have a you know, like a Max Giblin, even like a kid from the last couple of years. I don't think they have anybody at that caliber, but they have a lot of really good high school players. And maybe Spash will surprise me, but sometimes I lean toward the experience when you get to tournament, especially when you get to tournament time. And then Spash, end of the season, all of a sudden they lost a couple there after putting up that, you know, 16-0-1 record. You know, we shall see. But I think any of those four teams in that section are capable of winning it. And it wouldn't be a huge surprise if any one of them made it through. Think back to last year, Hudson was a 4 seed and they wound up winning it. Of course, there were a lot more upsets along the way to the sectional, but yeah, I just think top to bottom and just based on, you know, your Wisconsin prep hockey rankings, I mean, that there's some really good teams in that section.
Bob, I don't know if you remember last year, but I believe it was Eau Claire Memorial was upset by, wasn't it Wisconsin Rapids, like in the regional?
Rapids, yeah, yep. And that was the second year in a row Memorial was one and done in the postseason. Per year prior, it was Superior. And yeah, that's, you know, as somebody who's been following this Memorial program since, you know, the 96-97 season, that just hasn't happened very much. Granted, it's a tougher road now for any of the Big Rivers teams in D1 to get to state than it was when there were 8. There was one division and 8 teams made it to state. But yeah, that was a little surprising. So I think that was a motivating factor for some of the kids in the program. And they've had like I said, they've had a really good season. Hit a little dip around December and you know, lost a game to River Falls, which was a little perplexing. I think with Memorial, it took them a long time to get the forwards active in the offense and getting them to put the puck in the net. Byrne and Madsen kind of carried him through those first weeks. And then eventually the first line started producing, and then second line started producing as well. So like I said, I can't wait till tomorrow. Let's put it that way. So I'll be at the game, looking to write a wrap up for you guys, and then also paying attention to what's going on in the Hudson Spash game, because those are four really good teams, and I think you could argue four teams that are certainly capable of winning a state title, not just a sectional title.
Move on to Division Two, Section Two. Tomahawk was a winner over Rhinelander 5-3. Wapaka beat Anago 4-2. Mosinee was a 6-0 winner over Pines, and Lakeland blanked Pacelli, which gave us second round games of Tomahawk and Wapaka, and Mosinee and Lakeland. That's 1 through 4 seeds right there.
Yeah, Tomahawk and Wapaka played once this season. Tomahawk won that game 4-2, out shooting Wapaka 41-18. And from what I saw in the Great Northern Conference tournament, right now I don't know that Wapaka can hang with Tomahawk. If they do, it's going to be on their goalie, who was first team all conference. But because of games like that where they were outshot 41-18 and he kept them in it, but it's a tough road to hoe for them. This year, Lakeland beat Mosinee 5-1. But in that one, shots were 26-25 in Mosinee's favor. So it was a closely played game. They just had better looks at the net. As far as those two go, if Mosinee does get past Lakeland, Mosinee and Tomahawk have actually played 3 times this year. Their first conference game of the season, Tomahawk won 9-4. Their second game was like the following week, non-conference game. Mosinee won 5-4. And then in the Great Northern Conference tournament, they met a third time and Tomahawk won 5-2. Shots were fairly even in all those games. The big difference was just Tomahawk, for the most part, got the better opportunities. Mosinee's shots weren't as quality. Tomahawk and Lakeland played twice this year. First one, Tomahawk beat Lakeland 4-3. Burglar and I were up in Minocqua for that game. Lakeland outshot Tomahawk 36-27 in that game, and especially in the third period, I believe they came on real strong. And then in the Great Northern Conference tournament, Lakeland turned around and won that one 2-0. Again, outshooting Tomahawk 26 and holding Tomahawk just to 17 shots in that game. It doesn't help that Tomahawk's leading scorer sat for 15 minutes, most of the first period and the first minute and a half or so of the second, after taking a 5-10 for checking from behind. And they also had a 5-10 for head contact in the first meeting with Lakeland. So if it does get to be Tomahawk and Lakeland in the sectional final, they're going to want to avoid the 5-10 this time, because eventually they're not going to kill it off like they did the last 2 times.
And we almost had an upset in this one. Again, a 5-4. Anago and Wapaka were tied 2-2 with a minute left in the third period. Surprisingly enough, Anago's 2 goals came from one from Eli Kastler and one from Owen Dickman. And at that point, Anago was being outshot like 40-13. But they were tied at 2. Wapaka scored with 52 seconds left in the third period, and then got an empty net goal to make it the final 4-2 margin. But close to an upset there.
I mean,
Really, Kastler, Dickman, and Nolan Bennell in net.
Yeah, that's kind of Anago's 3-man game plan.
Yeah.
I don't think, I mean, if Wapaka gets by Tomahawk, I don't think they have enough to win both sides to upset their way to the state tournament. But between Tomahawk, Mosinee, and Lakeland, legitimately any one of those 3 teams could win this section. I mean, you have to put Tomahawk and Lakeland as the favorites. given their performances against Mosinee this season, but it's not like any of those performances was super dominant. Even the score differential wasn't backed up by the shot differential. And Mosinee worked on some things towards the end of the season to try and turn that around. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, any one of those three could legitimately come out of this one. I would like it to be Tomahawk because Mosinee went last year and Lakeland went the year before. So get another team in there. That's what we like to see.
Okay, let's move on to the girls in section 2. Round 1. Chippewa Falls Menominee Co-op beat the ECA Stars 5-1. Hudson was a winner over Black River Falls 6-2. And the Cooley Region Cyclones lost to the Western Wisconsin Stars 4-3. No, correction, 4-2. So that gives us second round of number 1 St. Croix Valley taking on Chippewa Falls Menominee Sabres, and Hudson and the Western Wisconsin Stars. The Stars, the 2 seed, going to get together and play in that one.
This is a battle between 3 teams that can't score and 1 that can. Really. Chippewa Falls Menominee, 2.79 goals per game. And they're allowing 3.42 goals per game. So they have a negative goal differential in the season, which is not what you want to see in a sectional semifinal. But they're still a strong team. They outperformed their goal differential. They were 12-11-1 on the season. Hudson just 2.17 goals per game. But they only allow 1.79. So at least they're in the positive, but it's only 0.38 goals per game in their favor. Western Wisconsin, 2.62 goals per game, allow 2.33. So they're only 0.29 per game ahead. And then St. Croix Valley Fusion on the other end, 3.96 goals per game. And they're still only allowing 2.25, which is second best out of those 4 teams. For a 1.71 goals per game differential between the 4 of them. The Fusion beat the Sabres 6-0 and 4-2 this year, and the shots were lopsided in them both. 44-14 the first time, 41-27 the second time. So Chippewa Falls did improve that second time around, but I don't know if they've got enough in the tank against the Fusion this third time. Hudson and Western Wisconsin played twice. Hudson won them both 3-2. The shots were 31-25 Hudson the first time and 39-16 Western Wisconsin in the second. And when you see shot swings like that, generally it means one of those 2 games was very sloppy. Hudson came out on top in both of them. Largely, I think credit to Kat Donna in the net. Probably the best goalie in the state, but I haven't seen them all. Dell's seen them all, but I haven't seen them all. Largely credit to her. If they do get past them, Western Wisconsin and the Fusion have played twice. Fusion won 4-2 and then lost 4-3 the second time they played. So there's matchups to be had, but I still think the Fusion are the class of this section. Of the 4 teams, they're the only one that consistently puts the puck in the net, and defensively, they're just as good as 2 of those other 3 teams, except maybe Hudson. I think Avery Martin for Hudson is a really, really strong defensive player and gets goals when she can. And then obviously they have Kat Donna in net.
Yeah, you've got some really outstanding individuals. For my money, Kendall Sunby of the Fusion is about as entertaining of a player to watch. Undersized, but tremendous skating ability, great stick handler. They have her on defense. She covers up a lot of things back there, but then she can go end to end. And the way sometimes there are ways when she does that, it's almost like there's cones out there on the ice, and she's just kind of slaloming her way through. And she's just a treat to watch. And with Matt Cranston, that he's won a lot of games and he's won some titles with that group over there. They're awfully good. Paige Steinmetz at Chippewa Falls Menominee is a player to watch just because she's such a phenomenal all-around athlete. She's literally good at everything. She's an outstanding volleyball player. She got hurt at the end of volleyball season that may have cost that team a longer trip through the playoffs. That gonna cost her the first, oh, I don't know, 3-4 weeks of the hockey season before she got game. But she's a special player too, and a darn good softball player too. Hudson, you mentioned Kat Donna, the kind of goalie that can steal you a couple games. So I think you kind of like what Hudson's able to do there. And then Western Wisconsin is just a really solid overall team. But I think you mentioned the numbers and you know, a goalie might be able to steal you one game, but can you do it twice? Especially when you got a player like Sunbeam on the other side. Hard to say. I think
I haven't seen the Fusion this year, but I did see them a couple times last year, and in both games, they were both close games, but both times there were Fusion players who it seemed like their whole plan on the ice was get the puck to Kendall, and that gets you in trouble. You have to be able to move the puck up the ice on your own. And if your first thought when the puck touches your stick is get it to Kendall, you better make sure she's open, because if Avery Martin is between you and her, she's not going to get that puck. You know,
Right.
Yeah, Paige Steinmetz is between you and her. She's not going to get that puck. And when you have one player who gets, all those superlatives in the newspaper, that can happen. And even on the boys' side, you see it sometimes this year. I saw it in Tomahawk won the game against Lakeland, but there were plays earlier in the year when Bergler and I watched Tomahawk and Lakeland where it's like, all right, give the puck to Austin Lamer. Like, well, you can't always do that. Sometimes you can't just rely on those people. And I think sometimes, I haven't seen the Fusion this year, but they did it last year. They rely on her a little too much. It's not a coaching decision. It's just the players on the ice. Like, we need to get Kendall the puck now.
Well, and I think the other thing that makes that such an intriguing sectional is that they've all played against each other. There's so much familiarity between coaching staffs and personnel that there aren't a lot of secrets. And I think that, I same thing. I think it sets up for a really interesting couple games here.
Well, I think the biggest difference in this is going to be who stays out of the sin bin. I mean, these teams have a tendency to get themselves in trouble with players in the penalty box. And, I really think that's going to come into play in these next 3 games in this sectional.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Well, obviously the solution is just to add checking to girls hockey. There's plenty of girls that would be perfectly fine with that. And some other
I think so.
All right, guys. Division 1, Section 2. Round 1, Ashwaubenon was the
Can
winner.
no, I'll let you finish. Sorry to bother you, Jake. Keep going.
Beaver Dam beat Appleton United 5-1. Fond du Lac was a winner over Shawano. Fox City Stars lost to the West Bend Ice Bears, and De Pere was a winner over Oshkosh, which gave us round 2 action. Bayport beat Ashwaubenon. Beaver Dam was a winner over Fond du Lac. Nina Hortonville Menasha knocked off the West Bend Ice Bears. And of course, Notre Dame Academy took care of De Pere. So that gives us semis of Bayport and Beaver Dam and Nina and Notre Dame.
Yeah. Well, the thing I was going to mention is I think the WIAA has got to make up their minds here on what is Section 2. Section 2 for the girls is over on the western part of the state. Section 2 for the boys is in the north central part of the state. And Section 2, or Section 1 or Section 2 for Division 1 is on the eastern side of the state. I mean, what is Section 2? Really? I mean, didn't Tony Evers redraw those maps?
Those are different maps.
Okay.
The semifinals, Beaver Dam and Nina are going to have to play much stronger games than they did in the regional final. Fond du Lac outshot Beaver Dam 29-20. The fact that Beaver Dam came away with a 4-3 win, I think, is a credit to their goalie, who's had a fantastic season. West Bend outshot Nina 26-24 in that overtime game that went 7-6 to Nina. You don't want to be in a position where you're giving up 6 goals on 26 shots and you're about to go face Notre Dame Academy. That's an unenviable spot to be in.
I guess that's a fair assumption. The thing about Notre Dame is they started really slow this year. I mean, let's face it, they replaced a lot of guys, a lot of very talented guys with younger guys. And it's taken
You
them time
replaced
to
the
get
head
it all
coach
together.
too.
What's that?
Right.
You replaced the head coach too,
Yeah.
so and what impact does I'm not sure, was he an assistant coach last year or not? I don't keep track of who was on the staff, and I'm not sure how well the players were, how much adaptation had to go on for that.
Their current head coach was a college D3 coach for a long, long time. Probably going to be Notre Dame and Bayport in the sectional final. I don't think I'm going to hurt anybody's feelings by saying that. Nina and Beaver Dam, they're going to get their shot. Prove me wrong. I'd be thrilled. I love upsets. They're much better than when the higher seed wins. Bayport and Notre Dame have played twice this season. Bayport won both those games 2-1. One of them was in overtime. I was at one of those games, and I watched the other one on the video. There were maybe 5 minutes of ice time where I thought 5-on-5 Bayport was the better team than Notre Dame across 2 hockey games, not including power plays. But Bayport won both those games, and they do it by they're perfectly content letting Notre Dame shoot from the blue line or shoot from along the boards. They will let them shoot from there all day long because they know they have Devin Russley in the net. He was a finalist for the Kirk Dobbins-Beck Award last year. Spoiler alert, the article will be coming out Tuesday. He's a finalist for the Kirk Dobbins-Beck Award again this year. He is one of the best goalies in the state. Leighton Jaschke for Notre Dame is a very good goalie in his own right. But Bayport, they're just phenomenal at capitalizing on your mistakes. And that's what, of the 4 goals they scored across those 2 games, 3 of them were kind of blown plays or mistakes that Bayport jumped on. And that's how they beat Notre Dame. They don't care if Notre Dame is piling on shots, and Notre Dame outshot them 38-24 in both games, 38-24 and 38-23. They don't care if they're pouring on shots from the outside as long as they don't give them the middle. And it makes for a very, very intense hockey game because Bayport takes that early lead and then they just kind of hang on for dear life and hope they can scratch out a second goal. Doing it 3 times in one season is going to be hard because I think, like I said,
it's hard to beat a team 3 times in one season.
Shut up. I hate that. It's statistically very easy once you've already beaten them twice. But like I said, 5-on-5, there were just a few minutes across 2 games where I thought Bayport had the 5 best kids on the ice, where they had the advantage. That's not to say they're not very good. They're very good. But Notre Dame Academy is still, even though they're not the juggernaut they went undefeated they were last year, they still have a large portion of that team. And they're still very strong. This is probably, I think this will probably, even though they're, the section of death is just across the state, I think this will probably be the best section final game out of all 12 sectionals.
Last year, wasn't it Notre Dame and Bayport met for the sectional final, right?
Yes, I believe Notre Dame won very late.
I was going to say, I know it was a very close game, and Notre Dame went on to, go on and win a state championship. Bayport's given them all they can handle the last couple of years. So, maybe it's Bayport's time. We'll see.
There were people saying, not just like random people on, Twitter, but like actual, hockey reporters from around the state, they some that do exist, and other coaches, where I heard them say that Bayport in the sectional final had the best chance of beating Notre Dame out of anybody they would face through the entire playoffs. And watching their performance at the state tournament versus how last year's sectional final went, it was absolutely true. Because they just kind of manhandled the state tournament. But that sectional final game was close. Bayport, nobody plays Notre Dame stronger than Bayport. It's like
I'm looking at it now. That sectional final game, Bayport led
it was
2-1.
seconds.
Notre Dame tied the game with 4 minutes and 15 seconds or 5 minutes and 15 seconds left in the third period, and then won in overtime. So the game went overtime. That's how close it was last year.
That was the closest anybody came to beating Notre Dame last season. And then Bayport's beaten them twice this year. So Bayport's currently riding a high, and as long as they stick to their game plan and keep Notre Dame out of the middle and give Devin Russley a view of the puck, they can beat him again. But it's going to be a tough road for them.
Didn't last year, didn't Notre Dame, not Notre Dame, Bayport lose one of their top players during the game?
Well, that's not on the score sheet, so I have to go off my memory, and as I get older, that stops working.
All right, let's move on to Division 2. Let's go to Section 3. Section 3, in the first round, Menominee beat West Salem. Black River Falls was a 1-goal winner over Baldwin Woodville. Somerset was a winner over Viroqua, and River Falls beat Regis Altoona McDonald, which gives up second round action of Menominee taking on BRF and Somerset taking on River Falls.
Well, I think the two.
Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, the two big river schools, I think, maybe have an advantage, or I think definitely have an advantage because of the competition level they play night in, night out. All that being said, Menominee, the defending sectional champion, kind of had some problems with West Salem Bangor. I think the score there, a 5-3 game and a 1-8 was a little surprising. Black River is kind of an intriguing team. They've got some really good young talent. And a couple of veterans, including a goaltender, Christopher Buer, and a good defenseman in Wyatt Madvig. But a team that's been really up and down this year. They've had injuries. There were some other suspensions that they, in talking with one of their players recently, he was telling me, he said, we don't even know sometimes which team is going to show up on any given night. They might be able to give Menominee a run, although during the regular season, Menominee handled them pretty easily. And then on the other side, you got a River Falls team that one of the wins it has is a win at Hobbs against Memorial, which surprised the heck out of everybody. But that was a game where Luke Linehan, their goalie, stood on his head and was just phenomenal. If the seeds do hold up and it's 1-2 and it's Menominee and River Falls, I kind of lean Menominee only because I think they have a deeper set of forwards. I think they have more guys that can put the puck in the net as opposed to River Falls. River Falls, you're kind of looking at a couple guys as being their, Wyatt Hopeful and Chase Weisinger are kind of like the two guys you look to, whereas Menominee, Colton Shatkowski is a really nice player. Hayden Weir and Cody Doms are his line mates, and they can put the puck in the net. And they got a couple other second line, Parker Marencel and Alex Slinner, some other kids. Then they got Jack Drought in the net, and he led them to state last year. He was their best player in the getting through the tournament last year, so they're going to need something like that again. But I would assume that it's going to be a Menominee River sectional final, but I wouldn't count out those other teams because again, it's hockey. You get a hot goaltender. The other goalie's not having a good night. You never know what's going to happen, and everybody tends to grip the stick a little tighter in the postseason when you know that, especially when you're a senior and you know that this could be your last game. But like I said, I think Menominee, the fact that they got through last year, they kind of know what it takes. They know that they've done it in the past, and it's essentially the same team they had last year. They're just a year older. And this was a team that just took its lumps a couple of years ago in the Big Rivers Conference, but head coach Matt Ellis has done a good job kind of coaching up the kids. And all of a sudden you're looking at these guys now that are, a head taller than they were when they were sophomores and freshmen. And they've got the physical strength now to kind of they always had some good skills. They just size wise just didn't match up with anybody in the BRC. So yeah, interesting sectional. And again, another one of those sectionals, I'm sure we could talk for hours whether Division II is a good thing or not, but I think for programs, like these four here and some of the other Division II conferences around the state, it gives these teams a fighting chance of getting to state. And if the goal is to grow the game, then I think that accomplishes that.
Bob, you get to see these teams. Menominee, are they? You're saying they're older. They took their lumps as a younger team. Are they senior dominated team this year, or are they?
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the first two lines, you've got 4 seniors and 2 juniors. Their top defensemen. It's a mix, juniors, seniors, sophomores, and the goaltender is a senior. But like I said, I think everything flows from that goalie, Jack Trout. He's a good all-around athlete. He was a running back in football, kind of a bowling ball type kid. He doesn't give you he's a smaller goalie, but he's super active and does a good job controlling his rebounds. And like I said, I think that top line, they've got some kids that can dangle, and they got some kids that can score. When I saw them early in the year against North, and they took it to North and wound up winning, kind of going away. It's all of a sudden I'm realizing it's like, hey, it's these same kids that we've been seeing for the last couple of years. They're just bigger and stronger now, and now they're kind of dishing it out a little bit, not so much on the physical standpoint, but as far as putting the puck in the net. So they obviously grew through that, through those experiences of taking their lumps against teams like Hudson and Chippewa and Memorial that they see night in, night out. Yeah, that's a good Matt Ellis, I think their coach deserves a lot of credit for kind of keeping that program going through some lean years and getting them to a point. Yeah, they got embarrassed at state last year by New Richmond, which was a really good team. I think New Richmond last year won the Big Rivers Conference, so that tells you what kind of team John Larson had last year. But I think in just getting through last year, that gave their whole program a really nice boost. And River Falls, I think Cam Wilkin, he's just in his 3rd season too. I think he's doing similar things at River Falls, because that was a program that had some really good talent over the years, and then just has some really difficult seasons recently. But they're kind of coming around, and they're another one that I think that having that 2nd division gives them a shot that they were never going to get if they would have stayed D1.
The question for River Falls is, which goalie do they put in every night? Because Linehan had the shutout against Memorial, and then Daniel Lynn turned around and dropped 48 saves on New Richmond to upset them.
Yeah, that's always a tough one. And Eau Claire Memorial's the same thing. You had a freshman splitting time with the senior, and they both did well. Based on what I've seen, I'd kind of lean towards Linehan, but I think I've seen him more than Lynn. Good problem to have, I think, but most coaches, Notre Dame was the exception last year because they rotated those two all the way through the state championship game. But usually you have one kid that's, for whatever reason, the coaches feel a little bit more confident about. So if I'm guessing, I'm thinking you go with the senior, or you go with the older kid, you go with the junior, Linehan. But that's just guessing.
All right, girls' side, Section 3. Fox City Stars beat Lakeshore. Arrowhead was winner over the Warbirds, and U School beat Brookfield, which gives us 2nd round games of Bay Area taking on Fox City Stars, and Arrowhead playing University School. So
As
got
you
a
look
1
at the,
versus a 5 and a 6 versus a 2.
yep, but as you look at this, the 6 over the 3, the last game that those two teams played during the regular season, Arrowhead won over the Warbirds 8-2 in that game to come on into this one. And as you look at that 6 versus 2, don't be shocked with Arrowhead coming out of this. They played 2 games against each other this year. University School won on their home ice 1-0, and then Arrowhead won 3-2 on their home ice. So I mean they split on the season in 1-goal games. So you know that tells you how close that game should be tomorrow night between those two. Bay Area, Fox Cities. Bay Area beat them 6-2 earlier in the season, early part of January. Bay Area has only lost 1 game to another team in the Eastern Shores Conference, and that was to University School in the conference tournament. And we talked about this last week too. They played twice during the season. The first meeting, Bay Area had won the game 4-0, and then they lost 4-3 to USM in the conference tournament in the semifinals. But you know, kind of think it'll be a 1 versus 2, but I wouldn't be shocked if it's a 1 versus 6 in the sectional final on this one.
Well, that'd be nice to see on the girls' side. When was the last time we had somebody lower than like a 5?
Yeah, I stepped. Did we cover how Arrowhead beat the Warbirds 8-1, the 6 over number 3? That was rather unusual, isn't it?
Well, as I said, Arrowhead had beat them just previously in the regular season 8-2.
Then how did Arrowhead get up with the number 6 seed?
Overall record on it. Overall record, Warbirds were actually sitting at 13-8-1 on the season, while Arrowhead was at 13-10. And they had played more than once during the season. Let me just take a look here. Arrowhead.
I think that sounds like the other coaches in Section 3 disrespected Arrowhead.
Arrowhead won
That's what I'm
8-2
hearing.
on February 6th. Arrowhead beat the Warbirds 8-2, but earlier in the season, on January 3rd, it was a 5-2 win for the Warbirds over Arrowhead.
Well, so Arrowhead is still up 10-7.
Yep.
Well, and then you add the sectional game in, and they're way up.
Well, anyway, I'm just wondering how they ended up seated like that.
When they had the pretty close to, I think you said that they had the same number of wins. It was just losses and ties that were different. Yeah.
Yep. And then
Arrowhead.
it probably depended too also on how they actually performed in their conference tournament.
Oh yeah, conference tournaments. Those are a thing.
Okay, you guys
But-
ready to move on to Section 3, Division 1?
Well, let's finish this one. We talked about how we got here.
Yeah, I just interrupted things. We didn't finish.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I did go through who I thought would be how it should end up in the sectionals, but I think it would be a 1-2, but I wouldn't be shocked with the 1-6.
Bay Area was very sneaky this year. I don't know what it was. Like they were always in the top 6, but they really didn't get any like 1-2 type votes until like right at the end of the season. They're 19-5. I'm like they snuck up on like everybody. Probably that season opening loss to Western Wisconsin. That weighed on people's minds. And then they just kind of blew through everybody after that. All right, MJ, you can move on.
Okay. Division 1, Section 3. Regional actions. Sauk Prairie beat Sun Prairie. Madison Memorial beat RWD. Madison West had no problem with the South Central Navigators. Middleton was a 4-0 winner over Baraboo Portage. Aquinas beat Onalaska, and Wanakee was a winner over Toma. Round 2, Madison Edgewood, top seed. They were an easy winner over Sauk Prairie. Madison Memorial lost to Madison West. And Middleton took overtime, but they were able to knock off Aquinas, and Verona didn't really have much problem with Wanakee. In fact, they flat out destroyed them. So it's going to give us round 3 sectional semi matchups of Edgewood against Madison West and Middleton against Verona.
Yeah, that the Middleton Aquinas game, Aquinas played 2 overtime games to finish up their season. They had to beat Onalaska 7-6 in overtime to make it to the regional final, and then they lose to Middleton 3-2 in overtime. Madison West beating Madison Memorial. That was their 4th time meeting this season, with Madison West winning 3 of the 4. Madison Edgewood over Sauk Prairie. That one wasn't. Sauk Prairie lost twice to Madison Edgewood in conference play this year. And then what can you say about Verona just with a 9-0 win over Wanakee?
Then, as we talked about, Edgewood and West going to match up, and Middleton and Verona. And, you know, these are two pretty good games for sectional semi games.
The first time that Middleton and Verona played, Middleton won 2-1. Shots were even. Second time they played, Verona won 4-3 in overtime. Middleton actually outshot them by 4, but still basically even at those totals. For a Middleton team that has gotten like no pub this year, I can probably count on one hand the number of coaches that have put Middleton in their top 6, but Verona gets votes every week.
Well, if I go back to my computer rankings, I know we've had Edgewood has been in and out of our top 6, but if we'd gone with the top 10, the computer ranks has Edgewood 8, Verona 9, and Middleton 10. So they are all packed right together there.
I mean, that makes the Big 8 like just behind the Big Rivers. If you're packing the top 10 with 3 of your clubs.
Burglar, since you've got that up, where does it put Madison West at?
15, which isn't really that far behind.
No. But going to be an interesting night in Verona tomorrow. The Edgewood West games at 5:30 and the Middleton Verona games at 7:30 at the Verona Ice Arena. And so I presume both games will be on the different rinks. I'm sure that Edgewood will be over there on their home rink, and the Wildcats on the other rink. But
So you would have ticket if you're a fan going to that, you'd have to get 2 tickets.
yeah,
That's
Yeah.
how that happens.
You know, Verona's got good defense. They've got, decent amount of scoring. What does Madison Edgewood have? They're okay playing a low scoring game. I mean, they've got a good goaltender who can keep them in the game. Verona and Madison Edgewood met a couple weeks ago, and Verona beat them 2-1. So Edgewood probably has that to think about if they get to one of those matchups in the sectional final. But either one of these two games, there's a favorite and then there's an underdog, and either one of those underdogs may just have enough to get past the other. Madison West has had a good young squad the last couple seasons, and they're getting older now. Maybe this is their time, maybe not. We'll find out.
They would have to take a big step up from what they did last time against Edgewood when they lost 5-1, getting outshot 46-28. I mean,
Well,
they got to make a big step up here in the playoffs to overcome that kind of deficit when you've got Rowan White sitting in the net on the other side.
now I did see Edgewood and Middleton this year, and in that game, I don't think Rowan White really had to work very hard in that game, but Middleton's come along a lot since then. And I think they're going to, if they get in there and play Edgewood again, I think they're going to give Edgewood quite the game. But they got to get past Verona first. I don't put anything past Middleton. I really don't.
Well, especially coming off that triple overtime win over Aquinas, that sometimes a game like that can give a team a real boost and send them on. If it's me looking at it, I think you give Edgewood a slim margin, but both Verona and Middleton are capable. I think in this bracket, I think West is a little bit more of a long shot, but yeah, I think it sets up. I think that's a sectional that 1 through 4 kind of rivals what's going to go on up in the sectional number 1. In terms of just strength of teams and just really intriguing semifinal matchups.
I mean, we've mentioned the overtimes for that game against Aquinas. We haven't mentioned that Middleton took 64 shots in that game. 64-36, they outshot Aquinas, but they could not for the life of them crack Mason Kelm. 61 saves he had in that game.
My goodness.
It's a good day's work.
Sure
Yeah.
is.
For some goalies, that's 3 days work.
Well, let's go on to let's get to the last round here. What am I looking at here? Section 4, Division 2. Okay, got it. Oregon had no problem with Stoughton. Waupun was able to knock off MG. Homestead lost to McFarland, and Fond du Lac Springs beat Cedarburg. So that gives us the next round matchup of Oregon and Waupun, and McFarland and Fond du Lac Springs. Last week, Oregon played Verona, and they lost by like 1 or 2 goals late in the game. But I guess Andrew Jakey may have been a little bit dinged up. I didn't get a chance to see Waupun play this year. I do know that Oregon has a pretty good squad. They got a good goaltender. When you've got the, goalie coach of many teams as your head coach, your goalie's probably going to be halfway as decent. So I'm looking at Oregon getting in that one. But you know what? McFarland and Fond du Lac. McFarland got a couple votes this year in our top 6, if I remember correctly.
They got
And
pretty
Fond du Lac
consistent votes
Springs,
for a good chunk of the season.
Solid team to the party.
I think I don't want to
In
say
fact,
this.
last year,
dramatic.
Oregon beat Springs in the sectional final.
I think McFarland is an above average team with a very good goalie. I think Raymond Wheaton for McFarland is a very good goalie. And they've won games that Without him, they wouldn't have won. And I think they're the underdog against Springs. Obviously, the Springs has been a juggernaut. Them losing to Oregon last year was not like a shock, but I mean, it was not. They've been a juggernaut. So McFarland's got a tough road, but they can do it. They've had a very all over the place, up and down season, with some wins that you look at and you're like, how did they beat them? And then some losses, you're like, probably shouldn't have given up 7 goals against Beaver Dam. So it's going to be a weird matchup. It's either going to be a really close game in McFarland's favor, or Springs is going to run away with it. I don't think if it's close, I think it favors McFarland, because then we've all seen high school kids start, gripping that hockey stick a little tighter, start trying to force things. When you're playing somebody you're supposed to beat and they're hanging right in there with you, especially when your season is on the line. So I think if it's a close game, it really does favor McFarland, but they're going to have to really use that first period to gauge Springs' speed, because they are very fast.
Well, I think what surprised us last year wasn't so much that Oregon beat Springs, it was how they did it.
Oh, yes.
Because Fond du Lac Springs had a very powerful offense, and they were questionable defensively. Their goaltender left like in October to go play somewhere out east, and kind of left them high and dry. And Oregon ended up winning that game 1-0. So, whoever they put in net, did a heck of a job, but Springs just could not score in that game. I'm looking at the game now where, Springs beat Cedarburg, 8-5, and that was with with Springs had their number one goalie, Brendan Geertag in net, and gave up 5 goals on 26 shots. Springs outshot them by a bunch, 46-26, but that's kind of a lot of goals to give up for them in a against Cedarburg.
And that's going to kind of thing that'll give McFarland hope. Earlier this season, McFarland played Edgewood, number 1 seed. They lost 2-0. Nothing wrong with losing to a number 1 seed ranked team 2-0, no matter where you are in the standings. They were outshot 46-17 in that game. But like I said, Raymond Wheaton, really good at his job. So, don't count them out. They got a shot. On the other side, Waupun has a lot less of a shot against Oregon. Oregon, they are top to bottom. I think they're very good. I think another spoiler alert, Nate McAlpine is a finalist for the John Hillebrandt Award, since we have D2 awards now. And obviously they've got Andrew Jakey, and forward they have they had several players nominated for our awards, multiple forwards, defenseman, goalie. They're a strong team top to bottom. For Division II, they were getting first place. They never could pass New Richmond on the poll, but they were getting first place votes pretty much all season long, and they never went away. And they were from different coaches from around the state. It wasn't always just like, oh, the Section 4 coaches down in the Southeast are voting for Oregon. It wasn't like that. They were getting them from all over, just not enough to beat New Richmond. So they're the number 2 team in the state in our poll, and they probably earned it.
Going back at my computer rankings here. Yeah, according to the My Hockey rankings, Oregon is number 2, Fond du Lac Springs is number 3. We're talking McFarland down at number 13 and Waupun at 16. So, yeah, the computers clearly say that Oregon and Fond du Lac are up there at the top and pretty much neck and neck.
And they may have to meet up again to decide it once again this year. Okay, girls side, Section 4. Cap City Cougars were a winner over Badger Lightning, 3-2. Beaver Dam was a 5-0 winner over the Icebergs, and Madison Metro Lynx blanked Viroqua 9-0. Given a second round action of Rock County Fury, the #1 seed, taking on Cap City, and Beaver Dam is going to be playing the Metro Lynx over at Madison Ice Arena.
This is basically the Badger Conference sectional. The Metro Lynx and Beaver Dam having played twice this year. December, Metro Lynx won 2-0. And January, Beaver Dam won 5-4. In that game that they won 5-4, they were outshot 44-22. Emily Smedema, 44 shots on goal, had 40 saves in there, whereas the Metro Lynx goalie had 17 saves on 22 shots. This is one that they split on the regular season, each one on each other's on their own home ice. This game is at Madison Ice Arena. On paper, the Lynx should win this, but how hot a goalie is Emily going to be on Tuesday evening? The other game is the Rock County Fury against Cap City, and I believe that Rock County won both their games against Cap City. The last one was a 2-1 game, and actually both games were 2-1. Rock County was on top, came out on top. The only conference loss that the Rock County had this year was a loss to the Metro Lynx.
In overtime.
Yep, 3-2 in overtime.
That was their last conference game of the season. And so the Metro Lynx spoiled their chance of getting an undefeated conference season.
Both games against the Metro Lynx, final scores were 3-2.
3-2, and as you said, what were the final scores against Cap City both times? Were they 2-1?
2-1.
So no team really in this sectional. I'm not that familiar with Beaver Dam, but Del, do any of these teams really light it up goal-wise?
No. Not really. I think the closest would be the Lynx, but I don't think they've lit it up this year a lot. Let me just take a quick look here. Go to their homepage, pulls it up, and the Metro Lynx scoring during the regular season had 3.83 goals per game, and we're giving up 2.79. What was Rock County?
Rock County may be the #1 seed, but I'll tell you what, either of those two teams on the bottom could come out of this.
Yep. And Rock County was scoring 3.6 goals per game. So, they actually scored less than Metro Lynx by 0.2 goals per game and stuff. So I expect it to be a 1 versus 2. Would we be overly shocked if one of the lower seeds won? I would be more shocked with Rock County losing to Cap City than the other way around.
And one of the things Rock County has is good goaltending. Jillian Travers played quite well all season.
Yeah, she has.
They got Emma Klagora, who can put pucks in the back of the net, along with her sister Ava. I guess with Rock County, just look at, do they have enough depth? if that line shut down, do they have enough depth to compensate for that?
Rock County had 3 players with 35 points or more. Macy Murphy, Ava, and Emma. Emma, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I believe she finished about number 3 in the state in total points. But that's one of these ones where, the other team says, okay, we're not going to let Emma beat us. It's got to be somebody else that's going to beat us. Because and you know as well as I do, MJ, that Rock County has a tendency to go the way Emma goes in these games.
Yeah, and Rock County, flat out, they just got to stay out of the box.
I
Of
think,
course, and so does every team.
but
Section where you keep talking about girls need to stay out of the box, and I'm like, just let's start checking.
but
I'll tell you what, though, Emma Klagora would be up for checking.
tell you, Jillian Traver, you brought her name up, and she was nominated for the Jesse Vetter Award. And you look at her save percentage on the season, a 933 save percentage on the season. So she's a goalie that can steal you a game and everything else. And I'm going to say every goalie out there, as long as they're controlling the rebounds, you can keep your team in the game. But if you have the defense that can clear out that puck, it really helps. And you just got to have your team play. And I think that's where this is going to come down in this sectional, is which team is going to be playing together, and not which individual skater is going to have the best game.
Okay. Finally down to our last sectional 4 in Division 1. And I go to the thing, and looks like I'm froze up on my other source here. Does somebody have the Division 1 Section 4 bracket?
You got an old computer like Bob?
So in sectional 4, in the regional semis, you had number 8 Kenosha Thunder over the Janesville Bluebirds 6-1. Number 5 Waukesha Wings over the WNS Storm 9-1. Arrowhead knocked off the Milton Redbirds 8-1. Marquette, the number 6 seed, falls to Beloit Memorial 7-4, and Muskego, the number 7 seed, went over the Cheesemakers 7-1. You made it to the regional finals. USM, the number 2 seed, knocked off Muskego 6-1. KMMO knocked off Beloit Memorial 8-5, the 3 over the 11. Number 4 Arrowhead beat number 5 Waukesha Wings 6-4, and Brookfield knocked off the Kenosha Thunder 5-2 and a 1/8 to give you things going chalk into the sectional semis. You have a 1-4 Brookfield Stars against Arrowhead, and number 3 KMMO traveling to the University School of Milwaukee. What do you know about these guys, MJ?
Well, Brookfield, not this section hasn't had a whole lot of top 6 action all season. USM, as we've seen earlier this year, they struggled, but as the seasons went on, they've gotten better and better. They played Brookfield. Brookfield beat them, and Brookfield's, I feel, is really on a mission this year. But it's one of those things where I see USM and Brookfield colliding again. And last year, Brookfield lost that game to USM in the sectional final.
I think Brookfield, I would say probably the first half of our season was pretty consistently up in our top 6. And it was if I remember correctly, it was kind of the second half of the season. They kind of stumbled out of the top 6, but the junior could actually give me the better answer on that. I did get to see Brookfield play Middleton in our game of the week in Middleton when they had the Supernova game. A lot of emotion going on that night at the rink, with what the reason was for the game going, the fundraiser. And I think that helped Middleton a little bit, and stuff. But it was a extremely well played game on both sides. Middleton did come out on top, but Brookfield had just gotten one of their players back off of injury, and I can't remember which one it was, but he was back skating for the first time after missing a couple games due to an injury. And so, yeah, I agree with you, MJ. I think this could very well be Brookfield #1 versus USM in the sectional finals.
Well, KMMO and Arrowhead's past experience against Brookfield and USM this year don't bode well for their chances. Arrowhead lost to Brookfield 9-3. And then they lost to USM 5-2. And I mean, shots were fairly close and in Arrowhead's favor, but I mean, USM, they're always good. And yes, you are correct. Brookfield was in the top 6 for the first half of the season, and then they sort of fell out and they hung around the 7, 8, 9 spot for the rest of the season as Hudson and Notre Dame Academy and University School started rotating through that 6th spot. Those teams all started kind of slow in the rankings and then came on towards the end of the season, whereas Brookfield kind of started hot and fell away. Where does the computers have them, Burglar?
The computers last time let me check again. They have been updated. The computers have University School at 8. Wait, that's the wrong one. All right, the computers have Brookfield at 6. Arrowhead at 12. University School at 14. And who's the other one we're looking for? KMMO?
KMMO.
24. So they're that's quite a drop, but yeah.
They have Arrowhead ahead of USM.
Yes.
Did not see that coming.
Wow, but you had a chance to see any of these teams this year?
I have not, but all I know is that USM lost an overtime game to Eau Claire North. So if you're going to go on computer formula, my guess is that probably dropped them a lot because North was a sub 500 team this year.
I think that's the thing that hits a lot of teams in this kind of that the teens band is they're just kind of inconsistent. They have more good days and bad days than the teams that that consistently stay in the top 6, top 8. They're generally mostly good days. Then you get in the teens, you have a team that can play top level hockey against those best teams, but not every time they go out.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. And then again, I'm just, having looked at the Big Rivers and being pretty much Big Rivers exclusive throughout the season. Yeah, I think you see that. I think you see some teams that every once in a while can challenge one of the top teams, but by and large, it's the teams that have done it start to finish that you like their chances, at this point of the tournament.
Well, guys, we've made it through all our sectionals. And I guess the only thing is now is let them play tomorrow night and sort it out from there.
Yeah, our words
Right.
are meaningless.
Yeah, drop the puck.
Yeah, Bob, you really got that nice one up there in your neck of the woods. My goodness, that's a
Yeah,
pretty strong sectional.
that's
some
a-
of the teams.
That's yeah, I think that has, and not only that, you got some high end talent. I mean, and again, going by the kids that play Team Wisconsin, is like you have quite a few from each team. Yeah, it'll be a fun atmosphere, and it'll be interesting to see which teams make it through, because there's a possibility, much like last year, you could get 3 teams from the Big Rivers Conference, 2 in Division II and 1 in Division I. It was a good league this year. It really was. It was some really good hockey, and credit to Chi High for getting through, but they will have to earn their way. And what's interesting too is that if it does turn out to be a Chippewa Hudson matchup, the final is set for Hudson in the new Drewiski rink. So even though the Chi will be the home team and get to wear the white uniforms, get to, have the last line change, that they're going to be playing in somebody else's barn. So that'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. So
Well,
yeah, it's good stuff coming.
First Hudson has to get by Spash, and I will be there. I've already got my tickets tomorrow night for KB Willett Arena to see Hudson and Spash play down there. So that should be a barn burner of a game also.
I think that'll be a very good game too. And like I said, I think in that section, and this is not just media talk, I think any one of those 4 could get through. And I don't think you would call it that big of an upset. Yeah, Chippewa's been ranked 1 for a good part of the latter part of the season, but I wouldn't say they're unbeatable.
I think the thing about those 4 is that I think any one of those teams can get through, and I think any one of those teams can actually win the state tournament.
Yeah.
There are other sections where I think, maybe 3 or 4 could get through, but I don't think they can win the state tournament. They can put up a good showing, but I think any one of those 4 could actually win the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with you that yeah, I think it just comes down, the old cliche, who comes to play and who, staying out of the box and not getting caught up and not just getting too worked up, just play the game. But yeah, it should be a lot of fun, and this will be a fun week. I'll be, keeping tabs on what's going on here, and then obviously what's going on around the state. So
This is the last time I'll mention computer rankings, I promise. Because right now, I mean, if you look, you look at the possible sectional final down the road, number 3 and number 4 are Bayport and Notre Dame. We mentioned Brookfield, they're at number 6, but the other spots 1, 2, 5, and 7 are the 4 teams left in section 1. Chippewa Falls, Eau Claire, Stevens Point, and Hudson. 4 of the top 7 teams in Division I, jam packed into this, final 3 games in section 1.
And what's so interesting is you look at a team like Memorial, 3 overtime losses, 2 to Hudson, both went to double overtime. The game in Hudson got the game winner with like a second and a half in the second overtime. So they're this close to being, even more highly ranked than they are in the computers right now. All 5 of their losses have come in conference. So they beat the teams that they played early in the year down in the Madison area. They beat the teams in that Memorial Meltdown tournament. They beat the teams in that tournament that they had over in Green Bay. I mean, they've got an impressive resume, and yet they're, here they are as a 4 seed in their own sectional. So I think it just goes to show that there are any number of good teams, and I think it sets up for a really good week of sectional hockey.
Burglar, our best Western Premier Park Hotel players of the week. How are we looking with that this week?
Well, if you were to read the next line, it says they'll be returning next week with the players of the playoffs.
I did read it. I just wanted to hear you say it.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. Thank you. I misread that cue. Yes, they'll return next week. because rather than the player of the week, it'll be the players of the playoffs. So I don't know if that means we're gonna have 3, a Division 1, a Division 2, and a girls. Bill's explaining that to me, but he's on mute, so
We can do that. The widgets won't work, but you know, we'll just have to
we'll
make
figure something out.
We'll figure something out.
All right, so remember that. Send us your nominations for player of the playoffs, Division 1, Division 2, and girls.
And the reason we don't do a player of the week for the regional round of the playoffs is that there are just too many teams that only get 1 game. And we try our best not to do single game players of the week. You got to have 2 good games during the regular season. 3 is even better.
Final thoughts section. Guys, I really don't have any. All I know is I'm pretty jacked to see how tomorrow night turns out.
When Burglar first asked, do you want to go to Hudson versus Spash with me? And I'm like, well, of course I do. And then I looked at my Mite hockey schedule and went, no, some idiot signed me up to be a coach. So I guess I will be at Mite practice instead.
But checking your phone during practice repeatedly, I'm guessing.
Depending on what our drills look like this week, that is very possible.
That's okay. I'll be at a Sauk County board meeting.
Checking your phone.
Yeah. Okay.
Kind of hard. I'm in the front row.
Well, you'll figure it out. All right, guys, nothing else to add. We've put in quite a show here. It's getting pretty late. Anybody want to add anything final?
Nope. Good night.
I'll take that
Thanks,
as
guys. We'll see you soon.
Bob, thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Okay. All right. For Burglar, Bill Jr., and Dell, and Bob, I'm Mike Hammond. Enjoy tomorrow night's games. Been listening to This Week in Wisconsin Prep Hockey.